Cave Chockstone collapse. In October 2015, a group of 5 friends from Virginia entered a wild cave in the Appalachian Mountains. The group was led by a 27-year-old man named Derek. Derek had been caving for 3 years and had explored about 20 different caves. He considered himself experienced. The other 4, Megan, Tyler, Hannah, and Chris, were on their first or second caving trip. The cave began with a narrow crawlway that opened into a series of tall passages and small chambers. About 400 meters inside, the group reached a section where the passage was blocked by a pile of large boulders. Between the boulders, there was a gap just big enough for a person to squeeze through. Above the gap, a massive rock was wedged between the walls of the passage like a bridge. This type of rock is called a chockstone. Chockstones look solid. They can sit in place for hundreds of years, or they can fall without warning. Derek told the group to squeeze through the gap one at a time. He went first. On the other side, he reached back to help the others through. Megan went next, then Tyler, then Hannah. Chris was the last one. He was the biggest member of the group, broad shoulders and a heavy build. As Chris squeezed through the gap, his backpack caught on the chockstone above him. He pulled hard to free himself. The chockstone shifted. Derek saw it move and screamed at Chris to stop. But Chris pulled again. The chockstone broke free. It weighed over 200 kilograms, and it dropped straight down and hit Chris on the back, pinning him face down in the gap. The impact sent a chain reaction through the boulder pile. Rocks above the chockstone began to shift and tumble. A second boulder rolled down and crushed Chris's legs. A third fell and blocked the gap completely. Chris was trapped under hundreds of kilograms of rock. Derek and the 3 others were now on the wrong side of the collapse, separated from the exit by a wall of fallen boulders. They could hear Chris moaning on the other side, but they could not reach him. Derek tried to move the rocks, but they were far too heavy. He had no phone signal. He had no radio. Nobody on the surface knew where they were. The 4 trapped cavers sat in the dark for 18 hours before a passing hiker noticed their car still parked at the trailhead and called the police. Rescue teams reached the collapse 22 hours after it happened. It took another 6 hours to clear enough rock to pull Chris out. He was alive but had 2 broken legs and a fractured pelvis. Derek and the other 3 were extracted safely. Chris spent 4 months in hospital. He told reporters that the worst part was lying under the rock and hearing his friends crying on the other side, unable to help him. Derek never went caving again. One tug on a backpack had nearly buried 5 people alive. Cenote silt out deaths. In the summer of 2017, a group of 4 certified cave divers entered a cenote in the jungles of the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. The group was led by a 40-year-old American diver named Brett. Brett was cave certified and had logged over 200 cave dives. The other 3, Lisa, Marco, and Diane, were newer to cave diving, with between 20 and 50 cave dives each. The cenote was a deep vertical shaft that dropped 30 meters into a flooded cave system. The tunnels branched out in several directions, with permanent guidelines installed along the main routes. Brett chose a route that passed through a section known for its fine silt floor. Silt is the enemy of cave divers, and it sits on the cave floor like flour, and the slightest disturbance sends it billowing into the water. In seconds, perfect visibility can drop to absolute 0. Every cave diver is trained in a special kick called the frog kick, a gentle motion that pushes water backward without disturbing the floor. Brett knew how to frog kick, but on this dive, Brett was carrying a new camera rig. The rig was heavy and awkward, and it changed the way he moved through the water. At the narrowest section of the tunnel, Brett's fins dipped too low. They hit the silt. A thick brown cloud erupted from the floor and filled the tunnel in seconds. Visibility dropped from 20 meters to 0. Brett could not see the guideline, he could not see the walls, he could not see his own hands. Behind him, Lisa swam straight into the silt cloud. She panicked and grabbed for the guideline but missed it. She kicked harder, which stirred up even more silt. Marco, behind Lisa, collided with her in the dark. Their equipment tangled together. Both divers thrashed in the water, burning through their air supply at 5 times the normal rate. Diane, the last in line, turned around and tried to swim back the way they came. But the silt had spread in both directions. She could not see anything. She followed the wall with her hand, searching for the guideline. She never found it. Brett managed to locate the line and pull himself out of the silt cloud. He surfaced 40 minutes later, alone. He told the surface team that the others were still inside. Recovery divers entered the cenote that evening. They found Lisa and Marco tangled together in the tunnel, 15 meters from the guideline. Both tanks were empty. They found Diane 200 meters in the wrong direction, in a dead-end passage. Her tank was empty too. 3 divers died because one diver's fins touched the floor. Brett never dived again. Sea cave cheap torch drowning. In June 2020, a 25-year-old backpacker named Ryan organized a group sea cave exploration trip on the coast of southern Portugal. He had found the cave on a travel blog. The blog said the cave could be walked into at low tide and was safe as long as you timed it right. Ryan invited 5 friends from his hostel, 2 Australians, 2 Germans, and an American. None of them had ever been inside a sea cave before. Ryan bought 6 cheap waterproof torches from a tourist shop for €2 each. He checked the tide table on his phone. Now low tide was at 3 p.m. They would go in at 2:30 and be out by 4. Ryan had planned everything around the tide, but he had not checked the weather. And he had not read the second page of the blog post, which warned that even at low tide, unexpected swells could surge deep into the cave without warning. The group arrived at the cliff base at 2:15 p.m. The cave entrance was wide and dry, with golden sandstone walls that curved inward like a cathedral. They walked in laughing, their cheap torches casting thin beams of yellow light on the walls. The cave stretched back about 80 meters, narrowing gradually until the passage was just wide enough for 2 people to walk side by side. At the very back, the floor dipped down into a shallow pool of seawater that blocked further progress. The group took photos and explored the side walls. Then the first torch died. The batteries were cheap and had been sitting in the shop for months. Ryan said not to worry, they had 5 more. They started walking back toward the entrance. Then a second torch died. Then a third. Within 10 minutes, 4 of the 6 torches had failed. The group was now deep inside the cave with only 2 dim lights between 6 people. Panic started to set in. They walked faster. Then they heard the sound. A low, deep rumble that came from the direction of the entrance. A swell, like a large wave driven by winds far out at sea, had pushed a wall of water deep into the cave. The water hit them at knee height and knocked 2 of the group off their feet. The remaining torches hit the water and went out. Total darkness. The group screamed and grabbed onto each other. The water surged in and out, each pulse deeper than the last. Ryan shouted for everyone to move toward the entrance. But in the dark, nobody knew which direction the entrance was. The cave echoed every sound, making it impossible to tell where the waves were coming from. 2 more surges hit, each one chest high. One of the German backpackers was pulled off his feet and dragged along the cave floor by the current. He hit his head on a rock and went under. The American tried to grab him but was pulled under too. When the tide finally dropped and the surges stopped, the 4 survivors stumbled toward the light of the entrance, soaking wet and shaking. Behind them, 2 bodies lay in the shallow water at the back of the cave. Portuguese Coast Guard recovered the bodies that evening. 2 people died because one person planned a trip the way you plan a picnic, not an expedition. River Cave Flood Gamble. In September 2013, a group of 8 cavers from a university outdoor club arrived at the entrance of a limestone river cave in central England. The trip leader was a 34-year-old postgraduate student named Martin. Martin had been caving for 6 years. He had explored this cave twice before during the summer. He was confident he knew it well. The 7 others were less experienced. Most had been caving fewer than 10 times. That morning, the weather forecast had issued a warning. Heavy rain was expected across the region starting in the early afternoon. River cave systems in limestone are extremely sensitive to rain. When it rains above ground, the water pours straight through the porous rock and floods the passages below within hours. Every caver in England knows the rule. Never enter a river cave when rain is forecast. One of the group members, a 21-year-old named Sophie, checked the forecast on her phone at the car park. She showed it to Martin. Heavy rain starting around 2 p.m., she said. Martin looked at the sky. It was clear and bright. He said they would be in and out before 1 p.m. and the rain would not matter. He told the group to gear up. Sophie wanted to stay behind. Martin told her she was overreacting. She went in with the group. They entered the cave at 10 in the morning. The stream inside the cave was ankle-deep and calm, a gentle flow of clear water over smooth rocks. The group moved quickly through the passages, laughing and splashing. At 11:30, they reached the furthest chamber, about 2 kilometers inside the mountain. Martin decided to spend 30 minutes exploring the side passages before heading back. At noon, the rain arrived, an hour earlier than forecast. It did not start gently. It hit the hills like a fire hose. Inside the cave, the stream began to rise. The ankle-deep water became knee-deep within minutes, then waist-deep. Martin told the group to start moving toward the exit immediately. but they were 2 kilometers inside the cave, and the water was rising faster than they could walk. The passages that had been tall and comfortable on the way in were now half filled with brown, rushing water. The low crawlways that they had splashed through on their hands and knees were now completely submerged. There was no way through. The group retreated to the highest point they could find, a narrow ledge near the ceiling of a chamber about halfway through the cave. 8 people crammed onto a shelf of rock barely 2 meters wide. The water kept rising. Martin tried to radio for help, but the signal could not penetrate the rock. For 4 hours, the group clung to the ledge as the water rose around them. 3 of the 8 were swept off the ledge by the current and drowned in the flooded passage below. The remaining 5 held on until the rain stopped and the water began to drop. Rescue teams reached them 11 hours after they entered the cave. Sophie was among the survivors. She told investigators that she had shown Martin the forecast before they went in. He had looked at the clear sky and decided the forecast was wrong. 3 people died because one man trusted his eyes more than the weather.